tell you a couple of things by way of who I am. I've been writing for many years. I've published 3 novels, a whole lot of flash fiction and some short fiction. I've taught writing in Master Fine Arts programs, and I've worked as a freelance editor for fiction. So I will tell you, first of all, why I write. Telling stories is my birthright. I grew up in the 1950s, New Hampshire, mill town, where truth came in tales from parents, neighbors, church parables, radio shows, and the constant talk, gossip, and lies, secrets and revelations, whispers that should have been shouts, shouts that should have been whispers. We hunted truth and wisdom with stories, the way scientists use test tubes and microscopes, math and theories. We found the universal and the particular. Our philosophies were based on everyday observations. Life didn't come with a rule book, and those who told us it did were deluded or liars. Life came with tears and laughter, pleasure and pain. The mill boss handing out 1 apple apiece to the workers on Christmas Eve. The husband mixing up the cups when he tried to poison his wife. The town that protected men who had murdered a man who needed killing. The man who broke the old dishes because his wife refused to use the new ones until the old ones were gone. I learned to mistrust generalities, stereotypes, and comforting lies. This has served me well. I love to read stories, hear stories, tell jokes and anecdotes. I write all kinds of tales, from the briefest flash fictions to novels that lumber downstairs in the dark of night to eat my cheese and drink my beer. What I write, my writing focuses on ordinary people who, by insisting on the primacy of their own visions and the value of their souls, become extraordinary. Many of my characters are poor people, struggling to grasp dignity and to hold on to their heart's treasure. Others are mechanics, farmers, secretaries, housekeepers, heavy equipment operators, all the great unglamorous. Slighted by pop culture and mass media, they are rich in spirit, humor, feistiness, and pathos. Though life pours acid on their hopes, though they bear the fingerprints of unfairness on their throats, they grapple love and care and beauty to their hearts. They have a wider view of life than others credit them with, even if they have to gather every resource of wit and experience, spit and spirit to wrestle their demons. I shape their lives into realistic stories because they pride themselves on realism, but I stretch the fiction so the narrative can catch their wonder.
Beautiful.
Well, thank you. I often think about the distinction between fiction and nonfiction, and in a brief kind of sense is that fiction can lie. It doesn't have to tell the truth, but it has to be believable. Nonfiction can't lie. It has to stick to the facts, even if they're not believable.
Yeah, I think I've heard similar things that, fiction, it has to be believable even. Yeah, basically I can just paraphrase what you said. I guess that's not
right. And it's believable within the world or the genre, the form that it takes.
Yeah.
Certainly if we're reading something set on Mars and 3000s, there's going to be a lot of invention, so, but it has to be within that world. It has to be believable, I think. And the other thing I wanted to talk about today before addressing my particular novels I find a very interesting kind of dialectic, I guess you might think of it as, between point of view and voice. Um, Mostly we think of first person point of view where we hear the story from a character's voice and where they are, in third person where it might be a conglomeration, it might be a close third person where it's what one person thinks, but it's done in a third person, or an omniscient author where the authorial voice tells everything. And within those things, there are different choices that a writer makes. For me, if I have a clear sense of the character's voice and how significant that can be, that's my go-to point of view. I think of Ernest Hemingway saying, all American literature begins with one book called The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah.
Which is all narrated in Huck's language, the language of ordinary people, in the 19th century, in the Midlands and South. They understand point of view.
And I'm trying to remember what year, I think that was 1880 something.
It was published around 1870.
Oh, okay.
But the setting is really slavery time, so it would have been back to maybe the 1840s at the setting, yeah.
Yeah, I was remembering it was an earlier setting.
Yeah, yeah, and Huck's voice is remarkable and interesting.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out now, having read some of Plowing Up a Snake, what kind of narrative structure you have there, and I'm not really sure. I don't really think there's an omniscient narrator in it. It kind of seems to jump into different people's minds.
Right,
and then occasionally it has sort of this overlooking the whole town, but I'm not sure it's quite omniscient.
the very opening paragraph, which describes the death of this character, is done omnisciently.
Yeah,
But all the others are done with a close third person. So when you are in one mind, let us say Billy Harms, the young man who works at the dairy.
yeah,
You know what he knows, you see what he sees, but it's not told in his voice. That would be the difference there. So, let's talk a little bit about Plowing Up a Snake, which was my first published novel. Plowing Up a Snake is based on an actual incident that happened in Newbury, Vermont, a small town, back in 1957, 56, where a farmer left his house at 4 in the morning to go milk the cows and was not seen again for 3 months, where his body was found several, about 40 miles down river in the Connecticut River. And the interest I had in that particular story was that my father was driving between St. Johnsbury, Vermont, in the middle of New Hampshire, late at night, and he was crossing over the river flats of the Connecticut River, and was very tired, and he stopped to take a brief nap. And when he woke up, he noticed in the river flats below the house of this particular farmer, 3 men were carrying something, and they carried it to the bridge over the Connecticut and dumped it in. My father had grown up on a dairy farm, and he assumed that this was a calf born dead and that they were simply disposing of it. Later, when the theory became that men in the town had gone to this man's, or Gibson was his name, uh, farm to teach him a lesson and ended up killing him. And that formed the basis of my novel, Plowing Up a Snake. By the way, plowing up a snake is an expression that just means to go looking for trouble.
Yeah, I remember, I don't think they've actually ever used the phrase in the book.
Right.
Although I guess I could see, what Marjorie, I think, is, Clay's wife. Seems like the kind of thing she might say.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the course of writing the book, other than using the character of the victim of Gibson, the other characters are invented, and in fact, Gibson and his wife's names are changed, and so on. But the story was very well known in northern New England, and in fact had made national news where some of the newspapers called it a northern lynching. The source of this was that Gibson had beaten one of his hired hands for spilling some milk, beaten him pretty badly. And that was the motive for some of the men to go and teach him this lesson. The town itself, at least most of the members of the town, deeply resented its reputation of harboring murderers and approving of vigilante justice. And interestingly enough, when my book was published some 30 years later, I was doing a reading and book signing in Littleton, New Hampshire, not far from the events in the town. And when I arrived, the bookstore owner told me to be sure to park my car around back, because there had been phone calls saying that he shouldn't have invited me to do this reading, and he certainly shouldn't have the book in the window. And said that there would be consequences. I did park behind the bookstore. There were no consequences that I know of. There were two men tried for the murder of Gibson, neither of whom was convicted, and to this day there has never been a conviction. Of course, all the main characters are deceased now. The people that I used were in some cases invented out of a whole cloth, but more typically there were people that I knew. I had myself worked in a dairy when I was a teenager, and I knew the operations of dairy, from picking up the 40-quart milk jugs from the farms to running a bottle washer to cleaning out a tank truck full of milk. In the evenings, there were still some things that I needed to do some research on, and I did so. And interestingly, when you do research, you sometimes find things that you hadn't thought about before, and that becomes part of the novel as well. It was also important for me to humanize the people in the book. And one of the characters that I used was one who became the victim of the farmer's wrath. And a character that I call Billy Arms, who was based on a friend of mine who did indeed work at a dairy. And I want to read a little passage where he first is introduced right after the very beginning. This is a week prior to the murder. A week earlier, when Billy Arms punched in at Land's Dairy at 6, he saw 2 jugs full of bad milk, each jug painted with Langley's large red L. Jelly Enman, the fat man who stood all day by the scales, weighing and judging the raw milk that came in from the farmers, was returning these 2 jugs that had come in the day before. Christmas or not, he told Billy, and I'm not going to credit him for the weight either. 1 drop of that stuff got into the system, it'd taint the whole batch. The fat man blotted the sweat from his brow with a white handkerchief, then slipped it into his back pocket. Billy said nothing because it was not his job to judge or return the milk, and he was thinking of the party they would have at noontime when all the work was done. Still he waited because the way Jelly hitched at his yellow apron, Billy knew the fat man had more to say. If Langley didn't try to squeeze and drain everything dry, Jelly said, then he wouldn't have this trouble. I've let it go a couple of times, like last summer. I figured maybe it got too warm on the way in. Jelly grinned out of one side of his mouth, the other side holding back the name of the kid who picked up the milk and the story of why it had arrived warm. Both kid and story Bill knew well, but it wasn't more than half funny to him either. Yesterday it was only Langley's that went bad, he said. I don't feature it was the kid's fault. Jelly knocked the lid from one of the 40-quart cans on the rollers in front of him. Shielding his face, he smelled the raw milk before dumping it into the scales. Now, he said, that's fresh product. When Langley opens these 2 jugs of his, you'll be able to smell them clean back here. A man's grasp shouldn't always exceed his reach, Billy said. From the pocket of his wool jacket, he pulled a 5th of white rum that he held gently at the shoulder of the bottle. I'll just keep a good grip on this until the party. Even Langley couldn't spoil that, said the fat man as he knocked the lid off the next can. Following the milk lines, Billy walked out to the larger room with the pasteurizers and bottling machines. Next to the short-time pasteurizer was a wooden case the foreman called his ammunition box. In his middle 20s, Jack Niles, the foreman, was a few years older than Billy and looked enough like him to be his brother, but they weren't related. They were friends, and Billy did what he could to look out for Jack. As he laid the bottle of rum in the box, he winked at the foreman and told him it was a cold morning. Looking up from his figures, Jack flipped back his thick black hair that hung in his face. And it'll be a cold day in hell before I talk to Langley again, he said. Jelly told me about returning the milk, Billy said, taking off his wool jacket. I told Langley we warned him about it before, and he told me he didn't need any drones warning him about anything. Maybe you shouldn't have called him, Billy said. He knew that neither he nor Jack nor even Jelly would have to face Langley, and the kid who would return the milk with smiles enough and 6.5 feet enough to withstand all of Langley's guts. Well, as it turns out, it is Billy that has to return the milk, and it is Billy who suffers from Langley's wrath. Let me move on to a different book.
Actually,
Also,
I had a question. Have you worked on a dairy farm, or there was so much detail in there? How did you get all that?
I did. When I was a junior in high school, I spent the summer working at a local dairy. I worked at the dairy itself rather than the farms, but one of my jobs was to drive around the farm. And in those days, most milk was sent to the dairy in 40-quart milk jugs. And another of my jobs was to run the automated bottle washer. Most milk was done in glass in those times. And I also did odd jobs, one of which was when we got a truck tanker load of milk. At the end of emptying it, someone, usually me, had to go into that tanker with very hot water and rinse the thing really well. I think I was picked because I was a short guy, and you have to do it hunched over. I turned that into a rather horrific murder later in the book.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I do remember there's a scene where someone is washing it out. I'm trying to remember which character it is now. It's
Yeah.
not a murder, it's just washing it out, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's somehow Chili who ends up doing it, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Some other questions about this before we go
I think
did you have an-
your history sort of makes it sense in terms of the manner of speech, like you're saying, and how they'd be talking to each other. It did feel very real when you were reading.
It was a remarkable experience for me, in that it was a job where even though I was only 17, it was a man's work and I was treated with more respect than I would have otherwise expected. Let me move on to a different book. This is also based on an actual event. And this is the book called Lighting the World. And it's, let's see if I can find my little introduction for that. So what happened was in 1986, I was teaching at Concord High School, Concord, New Hampshire, and a student brought a shotgun to the high school and took hostages. It was well before Columbine or any of the massive school shootings that we see now. And in fact, in the fall, it wasn't all that unusual to see guns on gun racks of pickup trucks in a schoolyard for some of the older students who would be going deer hunting after school or before. It was certainly a very, very, as I say, different time, and it was a shock, a real shock, of course. I didn't know the student who brought the gun to school, but I knew most of his friends, and I knew his teachers, and I spent a good amount of time interviewing them and getting to know them. He had grown up in the same mill town I did, except by the time he was in junior high, he moved to Concord, which to him was a big town. He was lost in this community and had difficulty adjusting. His parents were not particularly good to him. His mother especially was hard on him, and he, as I say, had great difficulty with this. And it was interesting to me that the common theory of why he had brought the gun to school was that since he had been bullied in 8th and 9th grade, made fun of, that he was now going to wreak revenge, particularly on one of the people who had bullied him, and that he came to school looking for that particular kid, didn't find him, and eventually he took some hostages almost accidentally. When I talked to people who knew him and people who had interacted with him, that seemed completely wrong. And that in fact, he was looking to essentially run away from home and he needed a ride. And he had been promised a ride by someone who'd given him rides before. As it turned out that particular kid had skipped school that day and so wasn't there. It was one that I changed names and invented some scenes, among other things. For research, I fired a double barrel shotgun with both triggers at the same time to see what it would be like. And it's dramatic and painful on your shoulder, but it is god awful loud. So let me read a small section from this book. And I wanted to give some sense of boy that I call Wade, in terms of his earlier life before he came to the city, and his love of hunting and his difficulties at home, and to humanize him. So this is now a younger Wade. Going after his first deer 4 years ago in Newfound, Wade carried his father's shotgun broken. The shells stuck brass end up from his bandolier. It was early Saturday morning, and all along Pleasant Street, no one made any noise. A light mist softened the shapes of houses and trees, only the brass rounds gleaming brightly. He had to walk just a mile up the hill before he could cut into the field bordered by woods that sloped all the way down to the Winnipesaukee River. He knew there would be deer bedded down in the field. He also knew that by the time the sun warmed the white frost from the weeds, the deer would disappear into the woods. All but one, the one he would have shot. The night before, his father had promised to take him hunting. As usual on the second half of the rack of beer, he had called Wade Bob, the son from his ex-wife. She hit the Oregon Trail, his father had mumbled, so my kids wouldn't have to lay eyes on me again. He had taken the last bottle with him when he'd left to pick up Wade's mother. She was working late at the restaurant to make extra money. Give her a treat, his father had said. Squire her to the Vets Club. That was okay. His mother deserved that. On the floor, the six-pack carrier had lain like a small wounded animal. Wade had tucked it into the wastebasket, then tucked himself into bed. His father wouldn't poke a foot out of bed before dawn. Sometimes his father kept his promises, sometimes he didn't. Wade was just sorry his father wouldn't see him shoot his first deer. Pleasant Street was pale white without a hint of yellow. The street lights still showed faintly in false dawn. Shades and blinds hid the insides of houses. Wade was 12 years old, by law not old enough to hunt deer alone. His 12-year-old face, with neither whiskers nor zits, It fooled no one into thinking him older. But he didn't worry. He felt as natural as the morning mist. Who in Newfound would care? He carried the shotgun broken and emptied. He threatened no one. He started no fires like one that had burned the school. If someone heard Wade shot, he'd think some man got lucky this fine November day. It was in season, and Wade was using a shotgun as was required within the city limits, silly as it was to think of Newfound as a city. Who could complain just because he didn't have his father with him? Once he had stepped into the field, Wade slid shells into the gun and snapped it closed. He released the safety, then reset it. The sun showing from just below the hill told him he was nearly half hour into the legal hunting day. No wind blew his scent to the deer. He told himself he was lucky. He hoped there was a buck, a big buck with a rack on it. Could his luck hold that far? His father had told him some men wait years and years to get a deer, and then it's so small it looks as if they bagged some farmer's German shepherd. Other men, like his father, got their deer the first time, a deer to feed a family for 4 or 5 days. His father had tilted back the bottle of beer, leaving Wade to guess what sort of man his father thought he'd be. Wade stopped. He dared go no farther. From here he could hit anything fleeing into the woods, although it would be sure to tramp another half-mile up the road, then cut back through the woods to get behind the deer. By then they might have scattered. He stood still, watching the sun. Red streaks flowed across the sky, tinting the landscape until Wade thought he was standing in a field of quiet blood. In the beautiful light, 2 deer, does fat with fall feeding, rose where the herd bedded. Their nostrils quivering in the cold air, they turned toward each other, then to him. He didn't move. They didn't see him. Then they did. They could see him no matter how good his luck was, no matter how much he didn't move. With a bound, they leaped toward different parts of the woods, their white flags held high. Wade heard them crash among the trees. He pressed the gun to his shoulder and kept his hand wrapped around the stalk. In the east, a tinge of yellow appeared. Wade would wait for the buck. A skipper, the shear's fawn, leaped up and dashed to the woods. Just behind him ran another doe. Still Wade waited. The sun showed true red now. Maybe he had waited too long. He raised his face from the gun. His eyes looked to the field with no barrel to sight along. He stepped forward. The frozen wild grasses crunched under his boots as if he walked over bones. White under his feet, white clear across the field, all the way to where the buck stood. He ran toward Wade, toward the road. Almost as soon as his eyes found the barrel, Wade squeezed a shot, then another. The buck, antlers high enough to catch the sun's red, kept running. Wade pumped another shell into the chamber. Before he could fire, the buck fell. When he reached the deer, Wade knew he'd suffered buck fever. Only once, only that one instant. Not in aiming, not in squeezing off 2 slugs, but in dropping his gun to run through the melting frost to the buck. He was lucky the gun had not gone off and blasted a hole in his back as neat as the one he'd made in the buck's chest. The first shot, too high on the neck, drained blood. The buck didn't quiver. That was the way to die. Sudden, quick, complete. Wade ran back for a shotgun. Why was he running? The gun wasn't going anywhere. But he ran all the way, picked it up, and ran again, this time to the edge of the woods, where he would drag his buck. Dragging the animal was far harder than he thought. At his first pull, his boots skidded on the slippery grass, pulling him sideways. He laughed. Nothing could spoil this time. Grabbing the antlers, he swung the buck sideways, and hunched over, walked backwards, the momentum helping him to slide the animal. The buck must have weighed 200 pounds. Again, weight slipped. He decided he had moved far enough from the road. With the hunting knife from his belt, he field dressed the buck, just as his father had taught him. Yanking handfuls of grass, Wade covered the buck. The sun, now high enough to have lost its colors, shone on the yellow field. Wade broke the shotgun and headed for home to wake his father with the news. "What are you traipsing home now for?" his mother said when he got there.
Mm.
Wow. So have you gone hunting or
I have gone hunting, but not for many years and never for deer, but I had friends who were avid deer hunters and who told me different stories about what could happen and how things could happen. And it was my intention to portray a moment of victory and of joy for this young man when he arrives in what he thinks of as the city. Um, he asks his friends where they hunt, and none of them hunt. There's no place to hunt. And I think that's emblematic of the kind of disappointments he faced. You get a brief sense of what his mother's like and her reaction here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem warm, to say the least.
But in terms of research, it certainly was something that, as I say, I talked to people who did it, and I was very familiar with the landscape. It was a landscape I had grown up in.
Was it so did you go hunting growing up or was it,
Not very much,
oh, okay.
not very much. Uh, we would occasionally hunt for birds, but I was not an avid hunter. But I didn't disapprove of hunting. Hunting was
Yeah,
part of life that I grew up with many people who did. So
I guess when you use the term buck fever, you mean sort of his excitement at catching the,
yeah, there's a kind of thing about fever there when people see a deer, particularly if they're first time hunting, uh, what can happen is they either shoot wildly
yeah,
or freeze and don't shoot at all. And when he talks about the buck fever, the mistake he makes is he drops the gun on the ground.
yeah,
And he recognizes that, but nothing bad happens.
yeah, the gun could have gone off and
Could have, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm curious when you interviewed people about their experience of the episode, how long after was it? Because one of the things that you hear now with all the gun violence is how much it changes someone's life forever. And, what was the time course when you were writing the book?
Um, I did the research pretty quickly afterwards. Um, uh, I was there for that event. And at a point later in the book, uh, the uh, the character Wade takes two hostages, and I knew both of those boys very well, and talked to them and took notes. It was a while later before I came to write about it. I think of the two boys that he took hostages. One of them talked his way out of the situation, and his reaction was different from the other one who did not talk his way out. Uh, and I don't mean to spoil the story for you, but the only person who was actually killed, was the shooter himself, was
Yeah,
the Wade character. So, there were very few students who knew what was going down. The uh, uh, character had gone into the main office, presumably to look for this kid to give him a ride. And when the assistant principal saw him with a gun, he assumed that he had brought it in as a kind of show and tell. And asked him if he wanted to leave the gun in his office. It was certainly far more innocent times than what we live in now. And at that point, the Wade says, no, you can't have my gun, and he goes out. And of course, they call the police immediately, and they locked the school down to the extent that they made an announcement that no one was to leave classroom, and they turned off the bell system. There was one classroom that had windows looking in the hallway where the hostage situation took place. Those students saw what was going on. Coincidentally, I had, they called all patrol duty that period. And I had walked past the second floor classroom, and one of the teacher there motioned to me. And when I went, she said, one of my students said she saw somebody come by with a gun. And one of the other students in the class kind of laughed and said, that's probably a janitor with a broom. And so I thought, well, maybe. And then when they made the announcement about closing the keeping people in the classrooms, I realized that she had seen someone with a gun. And I locked all the doors in the second and third floor classroom. Of course, afterwards realizing that I'd left myself no place to go. So his things evolved. I never saw him and was never in any imminent danger. But there were people who did have traumatic events afterwards. Interestingly, the principal, the assistant principal, tried to talk him out of the situation. And as far as I know, they did not suffer any kind of trauma from what they did.
yeah. Did you write yourself into the book?
I did, but just a very small part, just basically the part about locking the doors, and then
Yeah,
had the student in my class and used some examples of stuff that he would have written or would have done. But I was not, I didn't write my character as a motivating character or something.
yeah, that makes sense.
He did have frequent lunches with a science teacher who had befriended him. And I had talked to her quite a bit about what he was like and so on.
Hmm.
So that was different. Yeah.
So was there a bit where you were maybe tempted to write it sort of from your perspective? Or did you immediately think, I need to write this from the shooter's perspective?
I had learned back when I was writing Plowing Up a Snake, not to put myself into the book too much if it wasn't about me.
That makes sense.
And when I was writing Plowing Up a Snake, I had a character working in the dairy who was based on me, and it just kept getting in the way. So when I wrote this book, I knew to limit how much of the character that's based on me is there. I have written along auto fiction, which is all based on me,
Yeah,
and I'm there, but that's,
yeah, I could
That's
see
different.
that. I could see that happening. I mean, I was just sort of wondering if there was
yeah,
one point where it was, I kind of want to write my own impression of this as I lived through it, but I'll fictionalize it.
yeah,
So who's the character who's based on you in Plowing Up a Snake is,
there isn't one.
oh,
I took them out altogether.
okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I had, I wasn't there, I was,
Yeah,
13 years old when stuff was going on and, so, and I didn't make, the dairy people I based on real people.
Yeah.
That I know, yeah.
so were there any that were based on people that you were very close to in Plowing Up a Snake?
A couple, the Billy Harms character that I just read about was a close friend of mine.
Yeah,
In Plowing Up a Snake. Most of the dairy guys were people that I knew well.
yeah,
Billy was closer to my age, and so I did base the victim on a farmer that we picked up milk from, who was not a very likable man.
yeah, I mean, it seems like yeah, it's interesting how you decide to portray Langley in the book because he's not particularly likable, but then I feel like he's not completely unsympathetic. It does seem like at certain points you get, maybe it's more when you're getting the perspective of his wife, who's a major character in the book.
Right.
But it seems like in some ways the rest of the town hasn't been particularly warm to him, it seems like there
Right.
is some sense that they're resentful of him.
Yeah, I think probably one of the emblematic events was that early in his life as a farmer, there was a property auction of a farm that had
Yeah.
been seized for back taxes, and he got up early and bought it, and it seemed like for a lot of the townspeople that it was an unneighborly thing to do.
Yeah,
They, he was also very successful, and sometimes that doesn't breed admiration, it breeds resentment.
true. And I guess the bad milk, you make it sound like that had happened before.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Very much so. How we doing for time here?
It is 4:25.
Glenn, would you like me to talk about suburbs?
Yeah, if you wanted to, whichever one you wanted to talk about.
Um. Let me talk just a little bit about Suburbs of Heaven. Suburbs of Heaven is it's not religious, I hasten to say. And it's based on primarily my uncle, who was in fact closer to a brother to me because we were only 4 years apart. And we were very close. But we lived very different lives. He left school in the 8th grade. And I didn't, difference. He was a very funny man, a very perceptive man. And his, he and his wife had 4 children. And the youngest, who was the apple of his eye, accidentally drowned in a cow pond. And that was the incident that got me started on this, dealing with the aftermath and that tragedy, what it produced in the family. I used some incidents that he had told me about. I invented some plot lines, and I changed names. But in that one, I used multiple first person. Because I wanted the voices. The voices were really important to me, particularly Jim's. So I'll read a
Okay,
part of
sounds
that
good.
at the beginning of the book. Jim lives in a trailer, but not in a trailer park. That is rural areas. People will have a plot, an acre of land for something of that nature. To have their trailer and at uh, at this point uh, early in the book, he's money is a problem. His wife's name, by the way, is Pauline, and his enemy is a guy named Emery, who is his brother-in-law. He says, I'm wearing debts like a second skin. I might have to turn snake to get shut of them. Dust rises under my feet, and every blade of weed in New Hampshire casts a shadow across my path. Even without the wind, I keep seeing movement out of the corners of my eyes, like something's creeping up on me. Emery, a man with a savings account, says it's the damn $6.99 reading glasses I bought at discount. He's always saying it. I wouldn't need glasses at all to enjoy the sight of the beauty I see sitting across from my breakfast every morning. Pauline, she's the beauty I've sat across from every morning for 25 years. 2 years ago, Pauline wouldn't go anywhere except up to the graveyard every day. Emery's, he could cheer her up. Now she's seen trees blossom twice. She has her happy days, but mostly she worries. I know she worries. I'll die and leave her stranded in a trailer owing 3 years back taxes. It ain't only gravity holding me down. I don't set both feet inside my trailer before the telephone starts ringing its head off. That right there is the curse of modern man. An electric wire reaches right into your home and grabs you by the throat anytime it wants. Mr. Hutchins, a woman says. Ain't no handle on my name, I tell her. I answer to Jim. Mr. Hutchins, this is Agent Roberta Emerson of the Internal Revenue Service. Hey, I ain't no stranger down there, you know. We used to be on a first name basis. They garnished my pay a few years back, and I want to tell you it hurt. First name or no first name, they were snatching the meat from our plates before we could even set a fork to our food. Those people down there in the office just put me in mind of my son-in-law, Bessmeyer, in his younger, grabbier days. You owe us $200, Agent Emerson says, like she might just be telling me the special of the day. Now, to correct your mistake, we want you to mail us a check. I can do that. I want Roberta Emerson to know I'm an agreeable kind of guy. I can write a check for $200 and send it, but it'll bounce right back so fast you might not get to see if I've spelled your name right. Of course, I didn't make a mistake on my taxes. I just didn't have $200. The calculator my daughter Lisa loaned me couldn't turn those numbers into cash money any more than I can write a check right now. Just for starters, I don't have a checking account. Maybe Agent Emerson thinks she can attach my bank account. With one son near to jail and the other closing in on the asylum, a daughter keeping the gossips away from their TV show, and poor Pauline so deep in grief, the only thing she cares about are the kids' troubles. I speak right up to Miss Roberta Emerson. Now you've hassled me and threatened me, attached my wages, and it's not getting us anywhere. Now I'd like to do is pay by the month. Stores let you pay by the month. Could be time for you people to catch up on us working people. You would send us a check for $100 next week, she says. If you don't, we can come and put you in jail. For $200, you put me in jail? Miss Emerson, you don't understand what you're talking to a loser. For $100, you'll feed me and clothe me and house me? From what I'm sitting, that looks like the wheel stopped at my number. You send us $50, Mr. Hutchins.
Hmm.
Was your uncle, did he have that same kind of humor in the face of disaster?
Yeah, yeah, he did, and he was also awfully good at seeing through people's pretensions. And he he was um, probably brighter and more clever than many people thought. Uh, there's a great myth in this country that poor people are stupid, and it's a myth.
Agreed. So is the central incident kind of like the losing a child that you
I
mentioned
think
in
it's
the,
not so much the central incident as it is the inciting incident.
yeah,
It's what puts his wife into her sorrows.
yeah,
And his children's lives are topsy-turvy, and it does eventually reach a climax that is much happier than lighting the world.
yeah,
By the way, in lighting the world, I gave a character based on a girl who was also in that young man's class, who had a horrific home life, a father who verbally abused her terribly, deceased mother, and she had herself uh, uh, become an emancipated juvenile, so that she could leave home
yeah,
and live. And she went on to college and to have a very productive life. And I made her Wade's uh, romantic interest. Uh, he did have a romantic interest, but it was somebody completely different. But I wanted to present someone who was sympathetic to Wade, had no sense of his romantic interest,
yeah,
but was far more successful than he. Uh, the suburbs of heaven does have some quite lively and in some cases kind of horrific things, but it is funny, and it is ultimately, I think, a victory.
so that would be Maria, I guess, in the book. I was just looking at the back of the,
Yeah, yes, Maria
yeah,
and plowing up his and lighting the world. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But let me take it, if I can, take a couple minutes with some flash fiction
okay, sounds good.
in case perhaps people aren't familiar with the form. Uh, I will read two. Um, the first one uh, is based on my uh, mother-in-law, who uh, was a um, Polish American woman living in Chicago. And at this point, and with this story, she's a widow. Uh, and I tell it from the point of view of her daughter. Before moving, this is called anniversary cards. Before moving my mother to the nursing home, I sorted the personal stuff with her. I did it without my brothers because I knew they wouldn't want anything. When we were nearly finished, Ma pointed to the wooden jewelry box with the cameo carved on the lid. I swallowed, thinking she wanted to pick out jewelry to wear in her coffin. Only daughter always brought these duties to me. She lifted the tray to reveal not pale pearls of gold, but a packet of cards tied with common string. For a moment, I thought they were my letters sent over the years from 1,000 miles away. Then I saw they bore no stamp. Her speaking fractured and faded. Ma wiggled her fingers, catching light on nails I'd polished. The paper was dry like her skin if I forgot to grease her up. I worried the knot old and tight until Ma's clipping fingers showed me to cut the string. Not bothering with scissors, I bit through the knot and caught the cards as they cascaded into my lap. Ma poked me to hurry. Anniversary cards, the kind you buy at the drugstore, but not the big ones, not the ones with ribbons or embossed flowers you might like. I opened the first and started to read the verse, and then went straight to the signature. Ronald Appleton. No love, no Ron, which she usually called him, or Appy, which she'd say in a tender moment, or from the kitchen floor so he wouldn't kick her again. Ronald, I said. Appleton? She allowed tears to come down. I'd put her teeth in so her mouth looked full. On the envelope's upper right, in faded pencil, she'd written 10th. I read 20th, 25th, 30th, 40th, 50th, all signed Ronald Appleton. When I finished, she stopped crying. He died after the 50th, 17 years ago. My mom's hand on my wrist, still strong, her voice harsh, mean, don't show boys. I, the girl, was meant to keep her heart private. Mean myself, I showed the cards to my brothers as soon as they arrived, but in the kitchen where Ma couldn't hear.
Wow.
So those were, I guess, was Ronald Appleton the person she was with at one point?
It was her husband.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and do you have that one thing about he'd kick her on the floor?
Yeah.
Sense of the violence, but also the coldness of sending these.
yeah, greeting cards every year.
But then
Are they
that she
supposed to-
kept them and kept them organized but didn't want the boys to see. That's
Yeah, I didn't, this is a story I knew well, and I quite honestly didn't change much.
So are they supposed to be like birthday cards or something, or they?
Anniversary.
Oh, anniversary, okay, I missed that,
Yeah,
okay, that
yeah,
makes
they're
sense.
anniversary cards. But that's the irony that even on their anniversary, he's still cold-hearted.
Yeah,
Yeah. But she outlived him.
that's good, I mean,
thank
that's.
goodness.
So let me read you. This is a quite different story, and I'll tell you a little backstory about this. Writers are notorious for stealing ideas and so on from other people. And many years ago, a friend of mine who is a fiction writer, a playwright, and a close friend, we were together, and I told him a story about my brother-in-law when he was a kid, uh, waiting for Santa Claus, so in grade school, and he kept asking Santa Claus, and when's the Santa Claus coming, and so on. And finally, his father grabbed a shotgun, went outside, shot it in the air, and he came back in the house and he said, there, I shot the Santa Claus. He's not coming this year. No, my friend ended up taking that and putting it into one of his plays.
Oh, okay, yeah, I could, that
and-
sounds like a very theatrical.
Yeah, so I had teased him about stealing. So many years later, he told me this story, which I stole.
Oh, okay.
And this is called Follow the Balloons. Just follow the balloons. Warren, the son and heir to the Judkins pennies, told me. My wife's brother married into this stump humper family whose patriarch of fools finally fell victim to better living through chemistry. Oh, but Daddy knew how to party, bro, Warren told me. He ain't really dead. He's just lying back waiting for the drugs to kick in. And he laughed and called me bro a few more times, though he's the whitest man in New Hampshire. I knew they'd all be laughing when I saw the red balloon with a smiley face marking the turn off Route 3. I'd have to expected it to say party, but no, they'd kept the proprietors and written Judkins' funeral in black Sharpie. Blue, green, yellow, the balloons guided my wife and me through the twisty roads from asphalt to gravel to dirt. I'd never been to the Judkins estate, but I told my wife they'd probably hired a bright striped hot air balloon to hover over the shack. It's not a shack, she said. I tried to think of a smart answer, but she was right. We arrived at a long split entry with a lawn full of swings, slides, and trampolines, and a drive loaded with oversized pickups fit for hauling the ocean-going liners and condos on wheels all Judkins aspired to. Starting in the entryway, a line of purple balloons led downstairs where the family room had been turned into a roadhouse. Warren Judkins, in open flowered shirt, pressed white pants, and black safety shoes, grabbed my hand like he was snatching a T-bone off the grill. Hey, he said, did you come to have a good time or did you bring your wife? He grinned and pushed me aside. Oh, hi, Mary. He hugged her just long enough to piss me off. Don't stand there lonesome, his mother, the widow Darlene, told me. Grab a drink. I paid for top shelf liquor. Like my new do? Although she was 60, she'd had her hair frizzed and frosted. She hung a pointed finger above her head and twirled. I feel as fresh as the night Daddy picked me up on the Bennett's barn dance floor. Harold Judkins, the guest of honor, sat partially propped up, a bottle of 151 rum on one side of his folded hands and a panatella on the other. His pompadour flared white across the casket pillow. Between Daddy's DA and your dome, we could turn the lights off, Warren told me. Do you wax it or does your wife polish it with, hey, cuz? His shout and quick stride across the room, as if he might treadmark the tile, saved him from addressing down. When my wife stuck a drink in my hand, I said I'd suffered enough of the boorish Judkins. Harold's the lucky one, I said. He can't hear these buffoons. A gaudy collection of Judkins, their followers and hangers-on, filled the basement, each shouting above the other. Joking, cackling, preserving only enough dignity to keep their clothes on and their snot and saliva in their heads. My wife said something which naturally I didn't hear. Too damn noisy, I said. The widow Darlene tapped my shoulder and whispered in my ear, wait till the DJ arrives. A swirl of alcohol and tawdry perfume watered my eyes. I sneezed and coughed. Need a drink, bro? Warren slapped my back. We've paid our respects, I told my wife, which is more than these louts know how to do. Tick-tock. Bang, bang, bang. All around the room, Judkins armed with needles popped balloons. I pulled my wife outside to our car. She yanked her hand away. You, she said, are an ass.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, wow. Why did she think you were an ass?
Because he had no sense of what for these people was a celebration. And all he could see was how garish and so on they were, rather than that they were celebrating a man's life in the way that he was.
Yeah, I guess I can see her point then.
Yeah, yeah, it's uh, it verges on the unreliable narrator.
Yeah,
You see the point of view of someone who's something of a stuffed shirt,
yeah.
and
I mean, it was making it sound like Judkins was kind of, this would be exactly what he'd want his send off to be like.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it is it. When I first heard this story, it struck me as an interesting thing that, you know, people put balloons on to give
Yeah,
directions for celebrations and parties, and
yeah.
not for wakes usually.
So
But
this was a story that you said you borrowed
yeah, I
from someone.
stole.
Yeah, stole.
Yeah,
putting
I
that.
stole from my friend, yeah, yeah. Both of those have been published, by the way, and if you like flash fiction, you can Google flash fictions and find a great deal of it on the web, almost always free. And you can Google my name. I think I'm the only Merle drowned in the United
Yeah,
States.
that's, where does the name Merle come from anyway? Merle Brown, kind of seems like a,
I'm a junior.
oh, okay.
I was named after my dad. And I'm not, Merle in French means blackbird.
Oh, okay.
But my family wasn't French, so I'm not really sure why my grandparents named him that. It's more of an older country name.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has kind of that flavor.
Yeah, and those of you who are of a certain age may remember the Merle Haggard. It was a kind of a country rock singer in the past.
Okay,
Uh,
that sounds familiar. I couldn't tell you any of his music
Yeah.
though. I don't know.
there was a country singer named Doc Watson, whose son was Merle Watson.
Oh, okay.
So, and
So can you explain flash fiction?
yes, flash fiction is sometimes defined as under 500 words. Some people will extend that to under 1,000 words. The idea is that you complete the work in a very compressed form, whether it's a story, sometimes it's a kind of portrait of someone. Um, but uh, it comes in any number of forms. There are even flash fiction, science fiction stories, or flash fiction horror stories, and different different sorts. But it has quite a following. Um, the uh, uh, the the challenge is to say something, write something, create something in such a short and compressed form, but that it still works.
So what, does it have to be under 500 words or what is the,
There's no real rule.
okay,
1,000 is usually like the limit, and
okay,
when you look at flash fiction magazines, or magazines that at least accept flash fiction, they will usually define it for themselves. And the two numbers that I see most often are 500 and 1,000.
okay.
Some people make a subcategory called microfiction, where you can get under 100 words or under 50 words.
Yeah, that would be very difficult.
Yeah, yeah, those are even tougher. Uh, but it's an interesting challenge, and I part of how I came to this is kind of a interesting thing, the auto fiction that I wrote, I'm embarrassed to say, came out at somewhere around 800 pages.
Yeah,
Yeah, which was unmarketable among other things. So I spent a lot of time editing it and shaving it down to 400. And in the process, I got to liking what I could do with compression.
that makes sense.
So at the same time, I was working as another aspect of writing, of editing. And you can learn a lot about writing from editing other people's
Yeah, I can imagine.
things and learning to tighten their sentences, tighten their prose, eliminate scenes, things of that sort. So the flash fiction came in, very interesting.
And is that, I know you said, I think this was before we officially started the meeting, though, you said there are actually things you're working on now, right? And one of them was the auto fiction.
The auto fiction, yeah, it's an interesting, it's something that has become popular, I would guess, over the last 20 years, but it's certainly not new. And that to go back to Mark Twain, and Tom Sawyer is autobiographical,
Yeah,
but it's fiction. By the way, someone once asked Twain when he was a boy whether he was Tom or whether he was Huck. And he said, "Madam, I was Tom, unfortunately."
yeah, it does seem like Huck is a more likable.
So yeah, that was an interesting thing. Oh, well, I'm telling anecdotes. I had told Warren this story before we started, and I wanted to pass it on. When Suburbs of Heaven came out, I had a book signing in Concord, New Hampshire, and there was a good crowd there. And when I was doing some Q&A afterwards, this man, obviously not like any of the characters in Plowing Up a Snake, said, "How do you know people of this ilk?" And he said ilk as if it was a nasty word. And I looked over and I noticed that one of the ilk was standing next to him and had come to buy a book. So I said, "Well, they're family." And he looked kind of shocked. And I said, "They're everybody's family."
That's very wise.
Yeah, we all have. I'm trying to remember, did you tell the story of plowing up a snake where they were telling you to park in the back? Was that
Oh,
before you?
I did not. Yeah, that was, I thought I did. Didn't I tell that?
Well, I'm trying to remember if you told it
Yeah,
to
you
me.
did, you did.
Oh, okay.
I did tell that one.
Yeah, I couldn't remember whether that was before we started
Yeah.
or,
Oh, I did tell that. Yeah, that's,
but yeah, I'm sorry we didn't have more of an audience, but we did have people looking in on Facebook. It would show me when people were watching, so
yeah.
I
Okay.
know we at least had a few people look in and we are going to have this recording up on YouTube, so,
Great.
and people do actually watch those. I can go back and see,
And I just to give a plug, all of these books are available on Amazon, either as Kindle books or as paperbacks.
yeah, I was hoping we'd have some more people come because I did get someone to check out Plowing Up a Snake. I talked up your books and then she
Yeah.
checked it out. And then there was another, I noticed both of our copies of Suburbs of Heaven and Plowing Up a Snake were checked out on Libby. So I was hoping that meant people would come, but it's hard to,
Yeah.
but it was
I
still, it was
really
good.
have appreciated this. This has been really very enjoyable. So thank you, especially for driving down.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoy talking about writing and enjoy the idea of some new readers. It's always fun.
So
to
I
know.
will, as I said, I think I'm about, let's see, where did I'm on page 149. So I was right that it's Jelly who's going in to clean the,
Oh,
which is particularly funny since he's the biggest.
yeah, yeah,
And I think he's there because Sonny Rutherford is late. Sonny is the kid who
right,
is never on time.
yeah.
I'm gonna need to sign off, but thank you so much. This was really enjoyable.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye. Why isn't this?